Hello and welcome to this edition of One on One. I'm Paranjoy Guha Thakurta in the studio of Lok Sabha Television here in New Delhi. And in this edition of the program, we're going to discuss a very important issue, a very sensitive issue, the issue of funding politics. Funding those who stand for elections, their campaign money, as well as how political parties in this country obtain money. Now, this is, many argue, the illegal manner in which funding of politicians, candidates standing for elections and political parties take place is the fountainhead of corruption in India. Many believe this is the root of the nexus between politics, business and crime. To discuss the different aspects of this very important issue relating to political funding, I have with me here in the studio of Lok Sabha Television a person who studied this subject in great depth. He's a financial expert. He's a former member of the Central Board of Direct Taxes. Let me introduce Mr. Shahid Siddique Khan, who joined the Indian Revenue Service in 1972, retired in 2009, was a member of a committee which was set up by the Central Board of Direct Taxes which examined this issue of black money, and is currently working with a law firm and is also principal consultant of the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, which is engaged in preparing a report on black money. Mr. Khan, first let's look at the big picture. Do you believe that the way in which elections are being funded, the way in which candidates obtain money to fight election, the way in which political parties receive funds from different sources, before we get into the nitty-gritty, the big picture, this is the fountainhead of corruption, the root cause of corruption in India?
Yeah, thank you very much, Paranjoy. Yes, you're right, I agree that it's very widely accepted that one of the fundamental reasons of black money and corruption in India is the way we fund our election process and the way the political parties carry on their affairs in the public domain. I mean, there's no doubt on it.
Mr. Khan, in February of 2011, to be precise, on the 23rd of February 2011, the Law Ministry issued a notification increasing the maximum limit on expenses that can be legally incurred by candidates standing for elections by quite a substantial proportion, about 60%. In Lok Sabha constituencies, in most states, the maximum amount that can be legally spent by a candidate has gone up from roughly from 25 lakhs to 40 lakh rupees. And in most of the state assembly elections, the limit has increased from 10 lakh rupees to 16 lakh rupees. Now, different, from time to time, different political parties, different sections have said that these limits were unrealistically low. At the same time, we don't see many candidates actually showing that they are spending this kind of money. And we have a form, we have a expenditure statement, these have to be given to the returning officer. But these expenditure limits which come under the Conduct of Election Rules, which were last amended in 2007 under the Representation of the People Act, are they effective or not effective?
See, we have to examine this whole issue in three parts. It's governing campaign funding. The other is the funding of political parties. And the third is the increase in disproportionate assets of candidates and elected candidates as well as those who are fighting elections. Now, these are three different or distinct issues, but they are also essentially interconnected with each other. Now, coming to the point that you are raising, that is
campaign funding.
Campaign funding. Now, campaign funding is an area which is strictly under the control of Election Commission. Election Commission very stringently regulates both in terms of laying down the the expenditure ceiling, the appointment of election observers, and many other things.
And they go into great detail that you can spend so much on transport, so much on posters, so much for this, so much for that.
Yes. What they have done is, they have approached it in two parts. One is that they have tried to curb election expenditure. Now, they have done this by, number one, reducing the campaign period. They have done by saying that you can't have so many cars in an election process, in a procession, and those kind of things. And two, they have tried to put in regulatory practices by deputing election observers during the conduct of election. Now, when I say conduct of election, I mean the date on which a notification for election is issued and the
till the date the elections take place.
Till the date the result is announced. Now, that's a period of something like 35-40 days. Now, that's the only period on which the Election Commission has a complete power to regulate affairs of the political parties or the affairs of the candidates and monitor the expenditure incurred. Now, what they have been doing over last...
The rest of the year they don't have. I mean, rest of the period they have no control.
Yes, precisely. Now, confining to this issue of campaign funding only, now what they say is that this ceiling of 40 lakh, which is the maximum for larger states, the lower...
Yeah, it varies from state to state and union territory also.
Now, for this they appoint a election observer for each parliamentary mostly these observers are of the rank of Joint Secretary or Commissioner of Income Tax. Below them they have assistant observers who are assistant commissioners or deputy commissioners. So they have created a machinery or a paraphernalia of officials who will actually monitor, who will remain in the constituency. Now what the Election Commission has gone to great lengths by saying that only those officers who are not posted in that particular state will be given the job of expenditure observer. They should not belong to that state. They should not be posted in that state. So as to...
They've tried to in some ways introduce systems of checks and balances.
Absolutely.
So that these observers, these people who are responsible for monitoring expenditure are impartial and adequately empowered.
Yes. And they have laid down lots of detailed rules regarding maintenance of accounts. Now these, for example, these rules say that the candidate will open a particular bank account
and give daily expenditure statements,
maintain this expenditure
to the returning officer.
Exactly, to the election observers. And election observers will check this expenditure at least thrice during that campaign period. And what they have done is they have set up a call center, a control room, a flying squad, which will maintain a parallel record of expenditure being incurred by the candidate. That means if you say that you have held 3 rallies and the election observer find that you have had 5, so
you can be hauled.
So this election observer is maintaining a shadow register or shadow account of all that you have been saying that you are maintaining.
खान साहब एक और सवाल आता है, देखिए ये जो खर्च करते हैं लोग, जो उम्मीदवार है चुनाव के पहले खर्च करते हैं, you are saying how these are closely monitored, मगर अभी भी कानून में कुछ लूप होल्स हैं, कुछ रास्ते हैं निकलने के लिए. See, one of them, for instance, was earlier that you could be a friend of the candidate, you could be an associate, you could be a relative, and you can spend money on behalf of a candidate and say, the candidate can say, no, I don't know why ABC is spending. But this loophole has also now sought to be curbed. Have they been able to success?
Yes.
The Election Commission been successful in curbing or
substantially it has been curbed. All expenditure incurred by anybody on behalf of the candidate, whether this is the authorization or not, will be accounted in his expenditure.
How is this monitored? How does this actually happen?
No, because they have video monitoring teams. They have every constituency they appoint a team which monitors the media, how many advertisements are coming.
तो आप कह रहे हैं मैं उम्मीदवार हूँ और आप अगर मेरे लिए खर्चा कर रहे हैं, you are also, your expenses will be included.
वो खर्चा भी आपके उसमें शामिल होगा. सिर्फ उन्होंने एग्जम्पशन जो दिया है वो ये है कि पॉलिटिकल पार्टी अगर खर्चा करती है जनरल प्रोपेगेंडा पे, नॉट विद रेफरेंस टू ए पर्टिकुलर कैंडिडेट और ए ग्रुप ऑफ कैंडिडेट, तो वो खर्चा इस कैंडिडेट के खर्चे में शामिल नहीं होगा.
सर्टेन इंपॉर्टेंट पॉलिटिकल लीडर्स, वो जो राजनीतिक दल का बड़े-बड़े राजनेता के ऊपर कोई एक्सपेंडिचर लिमिट नहीं है. क्या आप इज दैट द थिंग?
नहीं, दे हैव सेड दैट बिफोर स्टार्टिंग, immediately after notification you can notify a list of 40 candidates 40 leaders of the political party whose travel expenses will not be counted in your election expenditure. And this limit is 20 for non-recognized parties. 40 is for the recognized parties, 20 is for non-recognized parties.
So you are saying if Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, or Dr. Manmohan Singh, or say Mr. Advani, Mrs. Sushma Swaraj or Mr. Jaitley, they can travel all over the country and campaigning for the party in general, including specific candidates of their political parties, and only their travel expenses will not be included.
Will not be included. That's right. So coming back to this issue, the rules, regulations and the machinery to implement those rules, regulations have been reasonably well laid out in the light of experience over last several elections. I mean, these are loopholes which have been closed over a period of time. So by now we have a fairly big paraphernalia of people who are on the spot, who have to contemporaneously manage and maintain and monitor the expenditure, etc., etc. So this part is fairly well organized. But the question is, what happens to the other part?
What is the other part?
Other part is, have they been successful? The question is that after putting in all these stringent rules, regulations,
and you are saying they have not been successful?
They have not been. Obviously, they have not been successful.
Why do
I say that? Right. Now, it is very well known or very well accepted that actual expenditure is far more than the limit. I mean,
so in other words, just because you have increased in February 2011 the legal limit that a candidate can incur by about 60%, so it's about from 25 lakhs to 40 lakhs for Lok Sabha constituencies, 10 lakh to 16 lakh, with some variations.
Yes.
This has not curbed illegal expenditure and the use of black money in election campaigns. Is that your contention?
In fact, I'll go a step further. I will say that these stringent regulations have forced the actual expenditure to go underground. I mean, most of these candidates and most of these election processes are being fought with money outside this limit of 40 lakh or 16 lakh.
How is this done?
Now, first of all, let me say what's the basis of my saying that? Now, there are three kinds of studies available. One is studies carried out by very, very reliable, respectable NGOs and think tanks who have actually carried out a survey.
Like the one with which you are associated, National Institute of Public Finance and Policy.
No, I was not associated with them, but Center for Study of Developing Societies,
CSDS, Center for the Study of Developing Societies,
had done a study, an actual survey of some 122 odd parliamentary constituencies which went to poll in 1999. And then they came out with a study report in 2002. Now, what their report is, I mean, this is a lengthy report, but basically what they are saying is that while at that time the ceiling was 15 lakh, the winning candidate incurred on an average 83 lakh. And the runner candidate,
so four to five
times, yes. And the runner candidate, second candidate, incurred 68 lakh. These are average numbers.
Okay. But 1 minute, I'm going to come to you to explain in greater detail, because the government is always saying that these are surveys, how do you authenticate it? So let's try and get in a little deeper into the subject. I need to take a break in our discussion. I want to discuss this issue with you. How are these ceilings on expenditure circumvented? And then I want you to look at how political parties are funded. What are the rules? How are their accounts audited? What are the changes that have been made? How do people end up spending such huge amounts of money? And this whole issue about donations above 20,000 rupees, payments by check, these are some of the issues I'm going to discuss. And I also want to discuss how large numbers of registered but unrecognized political parties have become conduits for laundering black money. Let's discuss some of these issues. We are looking at political funding, a very, very touchy, very, very sensitive, but a very, very important issue. Stay with us. We'll be back with you in a short while from now. Welcome back to our discussion on funding of political parties, funding of elections, whether this is really the fountainhead of corruption in India. With me here in the studio of Lok Sabha Television, I have an expert on the subject. I have with me here Janab Shahid Siddique Khan, formerly of the Indian Revenue Service, now a lawyer, a consultant, a principal consultant with the National Institute for Public Finance and Policy, was a member of the committee that was appointed by the Central Board of Direct Taxes on Black Money, and he himself was a former member of the Central Board of Direct Taxes. Mr. Khan, we were talked about how despite these limits are breached, and they are breached One of the reasons is there are no limits on the travel expenses of important political leaders belonging to political parties. What are the other ways in which these expenditure limits are breached? Because you mentioned a CSDS study which says that compared to the official limit, the actual expenditure may be 4 times or 5 times the amount. People could say these are just surveys. There is no authentic information available on the subject.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, these are surveys, no doubt. I will cite 3 types of evidence. One, of course, is these surveys. The other is actual seizures of cash and liquor and drugs during the election processes. Now, last 2-3 elections, the 2 state assembly elections in 2012 and 2011, and the earlier election, parliament election, the actual seizure of cash has been 45 crore in cash at different places in the 5 state assembly elections in 2011. This figure was 58 crore in the assembly elections in 2012. Besides that, in the UP assembly elections of 2012, roughly 3,75,000 liters of liquor were seized, and there were seizures of drugs particularly in Punjab.
You could argue that the Election Commission has now become more efficient, more proactive.
Yes.
And that's why these seizures of money, unaccounted cash, liquor, etc., have gone up.
Yes, but these are not accounted in the ceiling, in the expenditure within the ceiling.
Absolutely.
I mean, if they have been seized, they are seized because they are not part of the declared expenditure. Now, this is the second set of evidence. Now, the third set of evidence is the studies made by certain academics in a completely professional and non-partisan manner. One of the studies that I would like to cite is this one carried out by two academics of University of Pennsylvania and Columbia, Mr. Devesh Kapoor and Milne Vaishnav. What they have done is they have tried to study the utilization of cement during election period for 52 state assembly elections over 15 years. They've, the hypothesis they have built is
that once people make this money, they spend it on buildings.
No. The hypothesis is that the money garnered by politicians is usually invested in real estate sector, but when the elections come, this money is withdrawn for election purposes, so it is no more there. And they have used a proxy of utilization of cement during the certain period before and after election,
what are the findings?
as a proxy as to what is happening on the real estate sector during election period. And they find that there is a significant correlation between the building activity and the election period of 15 different states and 52 elections. Right? So there is, of course, you can say that this is also an academic study, right? But
you are saying there's enough circumstantial evidence to indicate.
This is built on real data. This is built on real data. So this is one set of evidence. And so, overall, if you look at the whole thing, what we know, from our personal
it's hardly
experience,
a secret.
It's hardly a secret. So now I come to another very interesting thing. There has been a demand for increasing the ceiling from 25 to 40.
They are saying this is inadequate, there's been inflation and all that.
And this Association for Democratic Reforms, this NGO, has done a wonderful work. They have tried to compile all the data relating to actual expenditure disclosed by the candidates, both winning candidates as well as losing candidates, to Election Commission. And they have reported that the actual average expenditure for Lok Sabha constituencies has varied between 45% to 55% of the limit of 25 lakh which was then. So therefore, on the one hand, you are saying that we are,
that the limit is inadequate, but you are actually not even spending that.
Not spending that.
So clearly there is some dal mein kala hai.
So this money, if you spend 25 lakh or 40 lakh, you have to also explain the source of that 40 lakh. So what is happening is that much of this expenditure has gone underground and is being met from unaccounted sources.
Acha. Khan Sahab, aap bataiye, I want you to explain one major issue which some of you are well acquainted. How political parties, registered political parties, not recognized by the Election Commission, they are being used as conduits to launder black money. Correct me if I'm wrong. Right now, as per the records available with the Election Commission of India, there are 6 national parties recognized by the Election Commission and 47 state level parties who are also recognized by the Election Commission. However, over and above these parties, there are 1,392, close to 1,400 unrecognized political parties, but who are nevertheless registered.
Yeah.
And many believe that these parties are being used to launder black money because they get certain concessions. Please explain how this works.
This will require a little bit of explaining. Now, there are two acts and rules. One is Representation of People Act 1952.
That's right.
And another is Allotment of Symbols Rules 1968. Political parties are registered by Election Commission of India under Representation of People Act 1952. Any party registered by Election Commission is known as registered party. And election.
That means you have a symbol which has been allowed.
No. You are only
merely registered.
You are only a registered political party.
That means you have a certain name and a certain address.
Yes.
And
Yes.
a name of a person.
Yes.
Who is your
the process
office bearer.
and the process of registration is extremely simple. You have to file an application in a prescribed forma with about 100 names of the persons who have come together to form that party. Their affidavit that they are members.
So you have to get 100 signatures. 100 names and addresses.
100 names and addresses. A document giving your constitution, your memorandum of association or whatever it is, and a draft of 10,000 rupees. And this is to be filed with the Election Commission along with a few declarations. Declarations are that you will abide by the Constitution of India, that you will prepare annual statement of accounts, that you will file those accounts with the Election Commission, and that you will contest an election in 5 years' time.
So you have 5 years to put up a candidate to stand for.
Exactly. So
it doesn't matter. You just have to contest it. You can contest and lose.
Yes.
Even your deposit can be impounded also.
Yes,
that doesn't matter.
That doesn't matter. So these are the only 5 or 6 basic conditions that are required to be fulfilled by a party to get registered by the.
Now come to the symbols rules.
Right. Now, symbols is a different story. Symbols is that Election Commission can reserve a symbol for a particular party.
So the hand is the symbol of the Indian National Congress.
Yes.
The lotus is the symbol of the Bharatiya Janata Party, and so on and so forth.
Yes. Now, for that you have to have obtained. You have to be registered for 5 years, and you